Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're trying out a brand new, well, not brand new, reformulated foundation from Tarte. This is the Amazonian Clay 16-Hour Full Coverage Foundation. I was actually really excited when they did release this new reformulated version of their classic foundation because this used to be my absolute favorite foundation since high school. I used it pretty much all of high school and a couple years after that because I just loved full coverage and this really hit the spot. So I have very specific fond memories of this foundation, so I thought it would be perfect to test out the new formula and compare it to the old one and see did it really improve or are they just, releasing a very similar product here. Couple details about the formula before we start with the application. It is $39 and it comes in 46 shades, so they did improve the shade range as well. It's a vegan oil-free formula. It has a soft matte finish and it claims to be full coverage, and of course it has their classic Amazonian clay ingredient in the foundation. I decided to pick up light golden, which seems to work pretty well for me. I will say it was kind of confusing trying to pick a shade because now that they did expand the shade range, I don't believe they kept the same shades that were in the previous formula. It seems that they changed the names of mostly all of them. I might be wrong there, but I tried to find a shade that I previously used, which I believe was called Fairlight Sand, and I couldn't find that one, so I did pick up light golden instead, which is number 226. They did also change the packaging. It used to come in that brown tube with a little leaf on it where you could still see the color, but this one is completely see-through, so you can see all of the product in here, but it does come in the same old little squeezy tube, and you get 1.7 fluid ounces of product. Before we get started, I did want to mention a couple things. This is not a first impressions. I've been testing this foundation, I think, for 4 different days. I used it with different primers and powders and without primers and without powders to see how it performs, because I don't like going into foundation reviews just as a first impression because it doesn't really help you out a lot to see if it's something that would work for your skin type, because with products I feel like I really need a couple days to see how they work with different products in my routine on their own in different circumstances. You know the drill. So yeah, not a first impressions. I did test this for a while. And then before we start, I will mention the cons of the old formula that I do remember from previously using it and being a fan of it, but I do still think there were some cons with that formula. So my cons with the old formula is that I found that it creased like crazy, especially in my smile lines, and even right into my nose crease. It would really gather very bad. If you've ever tried the old formula, you might know what I'm talking about. Just any sort of crease where your face moves, it would really just pool up in those areas, which was my least favorite thing about it. I still really loved it, but that was just one of the things that made me move on from that foundation, is the amount of creasing and just cakiness that you would get around your nose as you continue to wear the foundation. But other than that one point I mentioned, I don't remember disliking anything else about the product. I love the coverage of it. It wore a really long time and it did well with my sensitive skin. So that's about that. Let's go ahead and get into the demo of this product. If you've never used this formula, it is a smooth sort of whipped texture foundation. It's actually not completely smooth. It almost has this mineral, not really chunkiness, but it's not a completely blended formula. That makes it sound bad. It blends in when it's on your face, but you can see these tiny little almost mineral particles in it if you do look close enough. All right, let's get my hair back here. So I'm starting with this amount of product. I brought out my Rare Beauty foundation brush to use it with, and also an Eco Tool sponge, so we'll do half and half. I'm gonna start on this left side of my face and we will do the brush for this side. Very thick, very moussey. Did not mean to flip you off. Oh, I did it again. So I'm just going to start by dotting it on my face and then blending it in with my Rare Beauty brush, which, as you can tell, goes a very long way. I honestly probably didn't even need that much, but that's all right. The one thing I did notice with this, and I don't remember if the old formula had this strong of a scent, but it has a fragrance. Doesn't really smell like anything specific, but it definitely has a fragrance in there, which seems new to me. If you have tried the old formula, do you remember it having a fragrance in it? Let me know in the comments below. So there's the one layer on my cheek, You can see a big difference. Super easy to blend out. I mean, it really just glides on the skin, especially with a dense brush. It's just seamless. You don't really need to put a lot of work into it to get it to work for your skin. By the way, for skin prep, I just have my skincare on. Didn't use any primers, and I also didn't use a sunscreen, just to put it right on like bare moisturized skin, but I had used it the previous times I was testing it with sunscreens. We'll talk about those a little bit later on, but I'm gonna go ahead and use whatever's left just on my forehead. I also think it's important to mention that this, as you can actually tell on my hand, dries down a bit deeper than the initial color sort of comes out of the tube. So there's sort of the comparison swatch there. Honestly, didn't really find that an issue. I feel like it matches better actually when it dries down, but maybe just keep that in mind when you are picking a shade. So now taking a similar amount of product, on this side I'm using a sponge. And personally, I always start foundations on the outer portion of my face because I actually need the most coverage, and it ends up putting less product in the center of my face, which is where I get the cakiest and most creasy looking. So here's the right side application with the sponge. I definitely do not prefer it with the sponge, which is pretty surprising. I usually prefer a sponge with almost any foundation. Just feel like the foundation brush like mixes the formula a little bit better, and the sponge just sort of takes away the coverage of it. But it is very full coverage, and it gives a soft matte finish. I think the claims on that are true, but here's my roadblock and my issue with this foundation. I really am not sure if you're going to be able to see it, but this foundation it has a huge problem with my nose. Like, it will not stick to my nose no matter how I apply it. As I mentioned, I've tested it before and tried a bunch of different ways. So I have it with a sponge applied now, but it almost clings to dryness on my nose that I'm pretty sure I don't even have. Like, I exfoliated specifically before this video because I knew that it did that, and I feel like it's still just not looking that good. So hopefully you can see it in that close-up, but actually let me take a video on my phone. It's usually a lot better at picking up texture. So hopefully you'll be able to see actually what it's looking like on my nose with that video on my phone. With that video, I'm also noticing like it looks a little bit patchy on my forehead, and also just the side with the sponge. Didn't really seem to work that well. The brush is really the way to go with this formula. Just didn't give me super full coverage, and I feel like it sort of deposited unevenly. It might be my sponge, might be the product. Pretty sure it's the product, but you know, benefit of the doubt there. So overall, in terms of the application, I do think with a brush it applies really beautifully. It's super quick and easy to use. That thing with my nose though is pretty annoying. I'm not really sure how to work around that. I don't usually ever have that problem. I don't even realize I have dry patches on my nose, but apparently I do according to this foundation. It does look very smooth on my texture, which I also remember being one of my favorite things about the old formula, is that it looks good on like my cheek texture and my skin and everything. But in terms of dryness, if you have any sort of dryness on your face, this will not look good on dry patches. So really beware of that. I don't really think if you have dry skin, this is a formula for you. The finish is a really pretty soft matte. It still has this glow to it. You could definitely see sort of a naturalness in my skin, but it's not completely flat matte. It is a pretty soft matte formula, but because of that, obviously not gonna look the most skin-like. It does, I mean, it looks like makeup. It's a full coverage foundation. You can tell I have something on my face. It's not completely seamless or undetectable to the naked eye, that's for sure. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of my makeup. I'll link everything I used in the description below. Then I'll come back for our first check-in, and then I will do the wear test throughout the day and show you what it looks like by the end of our day. I think I totally forgot to mention this in the beginning of the video, but if you're not subscribed, I would love to have you. There's a button in this corner. I really hope I'm getting it right. Is this right? Is it? Anyway, subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you do find it helpful at any point. It really helps me out. It tells YouTube you did a good job. So here's our finished makeup look. Today's a weird makeup day, but you know, besides that, the foundation, it does seemingly somehow look a little bit better with powder. I did set it with powder, just very lightly. The one thing that is not looking better though is just that dryness that's very accentuated on my nose that I did not know I had. Other than that, powders do blend really beautifully over the foundation. I do like the finish that it has. Again, just the classic dry nose dilemma, and I feel like it looks very pretty on camera, but I definitely wouldn't call this like a very undetectable foundation, especially in maybe sunlight. I will insert a clip actually of how this foundation looks like in natural light I took the other day. But for our first check-in, it is 3:53. A little bit of a late start today. We'll round it up to 4 o'clock. I will check in at the very end of the night and show you how the foundation is looking. As I mentioned before, I have tested this before, so I do know what to expect in terms of wear, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. That's our first check-in. I will see you at the end of the night. Bye. I'm back for my final check-in. It is now 11:02 p.m. so the foundation has been on for a while. So let's sort of evaluate what we got going on here. Since I did wear test this a couple times before, I'm pretty much not surprised with how it's looking. I'm kind of really torn with this formula because it does look very good on my forehead, on my cheeks. It just looks super smooth, like literally nothing has changed in those areas throughout the day. My forehead maybe is a little bit more glowy, but it just stays so perfected looking. I don't find there's a ton of transfer either, but the con is just right in this center area of my face that really just isn't looking the best at this point in the wear test. It's doing just this really weird sort of clingy dryness thing that it was doing when I did first apply the foundation. My nose actually looks better now that my natural oils have sort of mixed in with the foundation. It actually looks less dry on my actual nose, but in these like little creases, the product actually hasn't really bunched up, but it really feels like it just has like dried out, and it doesn't look that good in this area of my face. I wish this area stayed as perfect looking as the outside of my face, because I would absolutely love this foundation and rave about it, but because of this situation, I'm not thrilled. So I did take some notes over the past couple days when I was doing the wear test, and I added some today. So I'll go over sort of my overall thoughts on this product. My cons for it is that it is very full coverage, gives a really pretty skin-like matte finish if you do like that. It's really great for combo oily skin. Actually, I would say probably just oily skin, because I do have combo skin, and apparently the dryness that I have on my face was just extremely accentuated with this foundation. And then it's very long lasting, and it has a very pretty, flawless, just like perfected finish. My cons list says that it clings to dryness. We know that one already. It can be drying on the skin as well. Just by the end of the day, I do feel like my skin gets a little bit dry feeling just from the foundation itself, which usually doesn't happen to me. That one's a bit of a weird one. Not for dry skin. That one's also an obvious one. It's a bit heavy looking in this center area of my face, and when I first apply it, it's definitely not the most like natural skin-like finish that you can get in a foundation, and it might be a little bit difficult to find your shade as well. Now that there are a lot of shades, which is a great thing, I just feel like the descriptions were a little bit confusing. I wish I had more like reference pictures or swatches. That would definitely be helpful. In terms of the formula versus the old one, I feel like it is improved, but I'm still having a lot of issues that I had with the previous formula. It's kind of just like different issues. Like before, it was in the same areas. It was right around my nose and around my chin. It looked very like greasy and kind of like slid off and bunched up. And now instead of being like too greasy, it's kind of flipped, and it's very drying, and it sort of like dries out those areas of my face. So they might have gone too far trying to fix that aspect of the formula. Maybe that was just how it worked on my skin, but it's kind of better, but also I feel like it's not that much better. So I mean, it does stay on your face for a really long time. This wear test wasn't super long, but I had worn it for a longer period of time, and it really pretty much stays looking halfway decent for a very extended period of time. If that's what you're looking for and you have oily skin, I might suggest that, but honestly, for any other skin type, I feel like it just has too many issues for me to really recommend it, especially for the price. Like, I really wanted to love this, but I just don't think it's really necessary with all the great foundation formulas out there. Again, unless you have oily skin, but if you have any sort of dryness on your face, please avoid this at all costs. I really do not think this would work for anyone with dryness on their face, unfortunately. So yeah, unfortunately for Tarte, I do not think this is their comeback product. A little bit disappointing that they went through this whole reformulation process, and from what I can tell, it's not that much better than the old formula, and it's still not a great foundation. So Also just noticed on Tarte's Instagram, they've been doing like weird marketing videos on their Instagram where they're very clearly using filters and like not just showing the actual product, which is definitely misleading. It makes me just like not want to recommend this product even more if they're doing misleading marketing, because I did see they had a video of someone applying this and then clearly it was filtered afterwards. So like, just don't do that. Like, I'm not gonna buy the foundation if I know that you're using a filter. That's just my thoughts. You know, I'd love to hear if you've used this formula in the past before and what you thought of it. As I mentioned, it was one of my favorites, but I feel like it's still not really that improved either. So kind of disappointing. Tarte, what are you doing with your life? Get it together. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it or found it helpful at any point. And that was it. I'll see you next time. Bye.